Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we are going to be covering a lot of playoffs. We're going to talk about the NBA. We're going to talk about the NHL. It has been a little while since the NHL playoffs started, and we have not given you an update, so we'll give you some of that in our fourth segment. We're going to talk about the big news coming out of the NCAA with Reggie Bush getting his Heisman reinstated for his after getting it revoked almost 20 years ago. The NCAA has finally decided to give the Heisman back to Reggie Bush after a very long time. And we are also going to talk a little bit about the massive extensions given out by the Detroit Lions just one day before the NFL draft takes place in Detroit. So we'll talk about all of that and more, but before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation at the link on the screen currently. There's a place for you to leave a message with your donation. That'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. If you do decide to do that, that's where you can ask any question and control the fate of the show here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. So if you have anything, burning questions, anything you would love me to talk about that I am not covering today or any other day, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net and leave a message, and we will talk about exactly what you would like to talk about. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show talking about the NCAA, something that they've done right. We've talked ad nauseum in these last couple months surrounding the NCAA about how they are a poorly run, mismanaged organization and how they don't do a lot of things right. But now we finally get to an opportunity for the NCAA. One of their biggest blemishes on their entire organization has been the treatment of student athletes that break the rules. The how harsh they are with some of these punishments, and some of them seemingly do not fit the crime. And one of the biggest examples of this is when they stripped Reggie Bush of his Heisman Trophy back because he was given a condo to stay in at USC. Recruiting violations, and they punished the player and the school. They took away his Heisman, took away his success. There was a huge scandal, and it's been kind of a black mark on the NCAA for quite some time. And now, after years, almost 20 years ago, Reggie Bush won his Heisman. Years later down the road, after the dust has kind of settled and we're entering a new era of NIL rulings, and the landscape of college sports is changing forever, the NCAA is going back and finally fixing some mistakes. The NCAA has a lot of work to do to fix the mistakes that they've made in the past, because their mistakes are vast, they are numerous. There are a million different mistakes that I could sit here and tell you about. There just are an endless list of stuff that the NCAA has done wrong, and it's good to see that they finally did something right. If you go and ask people that have followed the NCAA for a very long time, there's not a lot of decisions that are universally liked among college sports fans. And this is one of those decisions that just felt like a no-brainer, at least in my mind and everything that I've seen. People are excited for Reggie that he finally gets his Heisman back. There was a whole thing with the winner of the person who actually got his Heisman saying that he wouldn't accept it. It goes to Reggie. It's good. We had Johnny Manziel advocate for this a couple months ago. And now that we're finally seeing some change, we're seeing the NCAA kind of struggle with lawsuits and a whole bunch of other things surrounding similar issues, with donors and NIL and transfer portal and all this stuff, and they've been taking punch after punch after punch, and the way that it's been heading, the NCAA isn't that strong of an organization as it was 20 years ago when it handed out this punishment. Now it needs some of that goodwill back that it has been slowly losing for the past 30 years, and they do something right. They reinstate Reggie Bush's Heisman, and it's one of those easy decisions for them to make that goes a long way. That shows, hey, maybe the NCAA is changing. Maybe there's some hope for the future of the NCAA college football that doesn't have a Super League being created with just the Big Ten and the SEC or any of those proposals that would essentially separate college football from the rest of college sports. The NCAA makes a decision, and I'm very happy that they are able to make decisions like this, that they're able. Excuse me. I'm very happy that the NCAA is able to come together and make these decisions, make a good choice for once. It's been way too long since something like this has happened. Other rules that the NCAA has pushed through recently that I just haven't had time to talk about, we take a look at the new transfer rules. We talk about all the lawsuits they're in with the NIL and how the landscape of the NCAA is changing dramatically. More people are transferring than ever, and the rule of having to sit out a year for a lot of transfers is hitting a lot of these players hard. It's taking them a while, and with the amount of transferring that's going on now, even with players sitting out, they're granting waivers. They finally waived it. As long as those players are in good academic standards, they can transfer as many times as they would like without having to sit out a year at the second transfer, which could be positive or negative, in the sense that you don't generally want, at least me personally, with the transfer portal, I'm in support of it. If you want to get playing time and you're not getting playing time, get out of there. There's a multitude of other reasons why you might want to transfer, and I am in support of the transfer portal as a general concept. But if you're a guy that is transferring every single year, if you're a star player, there's going to be less at these small schools, especially. You get to see less of these homegrown stars. They're going to transfer out once they get a little bit of success. Me personally, being a student of James Madison University, we had our coach move to Indiana, and not that it's unexpected that players follow, but you go from one of the best group of 5 programs to a team that is stripped, has a new coach, is building in, is doing a really good job of building up, but you get all that talent sucking out to the bigger schools, which is a great thing. These players are moving up. They're getting starting positions with more light on them, and it's great. We love that the transfer portal gives players the option and ability to move up to higher level competition and advance their career to better status. But when sometimes it gets to a point where you're looking at the transfer portal and you're losing that kind of 4-year player at schools, that the loyalty for certain schools, those small town heroes, these school legends, you're getting less and less of them. So there's a lot of positives to these rules, and in general, I'm in support of it. But there's that one little, I guess, it's not a silver lining because it's not a good thing. Whatever the opposite of a silver lining is, the one little caveat in there that makes me pause a little bit in giving it my full support. I love giving students the freedom because this is a career for them. If they're going to start getting paid, they have the ability to treat it however they would like. So more freedom to the student athletes is what this rule is giving, but there are some drawbacks that could come from it, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a perfect system. They need to start developing rules, better rules, more cohesive rules for the transfer portal, for developing NIL and everything, and that's going to come with time. This is still brand new. We are in the midst of a deep change in the NCAA, something that just does not happen. You don't have these cosmic, huge changes happening all the time in sports leagues. It's really rare for this kind of thing to be happening. So when you get to experience a seismic shift in the way that sports are run, especially an organization as big as the NCAA, it can either collapse or it can adapt. And it needs to start to adapt, and it needs to start to do that soon. Otherwise, we're already seeing big cracks start to form, especially in college football. And you don't want to see, if that starts to happen in college basketball or any of those other big college sports, the NCAA is going to collapse. So, good on the NCAA for reinstating Reggie Bush. giving him his Heisman back. That is something that had to happen. That's something that needed to be solved, and they did the right thing. Congratulations, NCAA. That has not happened in quite some time. But they still need to continue to adapt to this new era of college sports with NIL and the transfer portal being bigger and bigger, and they're taking steps in the right directions. They're staving off a little bit of that disaster that might be potentially down the road. But they need to continue to adapt. They need to continue to change with the new laws and everything that's coming out with NIL. And when the dust finally settles, they need to be ready to adapt to whatever it is. And that's not an easy thing to do. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's easy. Just let it go. You'll figure it out. No worries at all. It's not an easy thing. It's much easier to sit here and say that than to get to be ready to actually change, because it's going to be a big change. But change with the times or get left behind. And that's where the NCAA is right now, and they're starting to change, but they need to do it. They need to start to pick up the pace a little more. Anyway, in our second segment coming up, we're going to move into NBA playoffs, talk a little bit about the games of yesterday, what the rest of those series looks like, the Pacers taking a huge win in Game 2 behind Pascal Siakam, and what the future that series looks like with the Bucks, even without Giannis. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.